Stay 6 or 7. It's a real race against the clock, running out of time. The few people that know that I'm doing this Haggadah project are asking me why. Why am I putting myself through it? I don't know if I can answer that, but I'm in too deep. I'm hoping I can finish. I am making some breakthroughs. I am engaging with the material. I'm telling the story. Am I doing the right thing in trying to tell this story to my kids? Last night, I spent very little time with them because I was back in my home office trying to finish. I don't know. I can't justify it, but I'm going to attempt and finish what I started as best I can. So let me show you where we're at. Opening Adobe Express here, I'm actually feeling a little bit better. It looks, like you can really see progress. These are the pages of the book laid out at least in a decent way. And it's okay. It's a good amount. What I started with was Magid. I ended last time with the Achatz, I think, and the Matzah, and got to Magid. And the first biggest task here was I was reviewing the things in black here, was reviewing what was in my program. And I had this little illustration of the baby in the basket from before. And I didn't want to give away the narrative. Like the Seder, the Haggadah, in my view, in terms of it, it's supposed to be storytelling. Like, where's the story? And the story of the Exodus is such a great story, such a classic, Aristotle-like story. And this is why I'm kicking myself now because of, I'm just adding more stuff to myself. But I said, hey, the story has to be interwoven in here to make this engaging. Like, that is the engaging part. And so I ended up putting the story beats in purple of the Exodus story that I think needs to go in, and then shuffle it in with the different elements of the Magid to give it a good cadence and make it engaging. So and I really kind of reshuffled what I had before. I was moving these elements around quite a bit until I landed upon something. And GPT likes where I landed. At the end, I was I was just sharing screen grabs with it because I just couldn't type anymore. But see, what I'm finding is AI. Anyway, it's good. It's giving feedback. It's generating stuff from scratch. It's really a mixed bag. But anyway, so here's what we're at. Baby in a basket. And I'm thinking about it as the birth of Moses, but the birth of our story, the beginning. The 4 questions. Because that is asking the question, like, what is this all about? So this is very much an opening thing. Then the speech impediment, which is really not included in a lot of Haggadah tellings, but when I told this story about the coal and the speech impediment to my daughter Frida, she's just enthralled by it. It's so visceral. And what I like about it, it is a visceral thing, putting the coal into your mouth. But what I like about this is that the hero here is not Rambo. That's a guy with a stuttering guy with a speech impediment that was forced. Again, in terms of a hero's journey, like, he's the most unlikely hero, and that's really cool. So I decided to include that. Then Havadim Ainu, the status quo, our nation without an identity as slaves. The burning bush, which is the call to action for Moses, the turning point, the refusal of the call, like some screenwriters call it. From there, we're going to go into the 4 sons. The second cup, kind of midway. Sip and clean our gullets. The 10 plagues. By the way, the baby in the basket is also a good way to introduce the symmetry with the firstborn plague. Then the bread of affliction, which was always the opening, I'm moving it over here because the Exodus is coming after the 10 plagues, the actual exiting from Egypt. So this is where the bread of affliction makes sense to be. And I'll follow that by Miriam's song because I want some more feminist power there. I'm also put some feminist power in the baby in the basket, saying that the original resistance came from the women. Dayenu. Now, after Miriam celebrating, we're all celebrating, not taking for granted what we have, and then Gamliel summing it all up. So that is the framework that we have right now. All right. Okay, so this was my first real challenge. Once I decided to tell the story itself, the narrative, I laid out this page, and I just loved how empty and simple it is and beautiful it is. And again, I was thinking about this Seder. It's not really a book. Like, I don't want to write the story in my own words. First of all, I wanted to try to engage the people around the table and have them try to tell the story. So, do I write the story? I don't want to dictate what it is. I also don't want to clutter my pages too much since this is also a coloring book / activity book / what have you. And I think I had probably one of my biggest breakthroughs so far in terms of format, which is like, I harken back to the days I played Dungeons and Dragons. And in Dungeons and Dragons, there's 2 core books. There's the player's handbook and there's the Dungeons Master's guide. And like, whoever's the DJ for this Haggadah, whoever's the master of ceremonies here, is the Dungeon Master. So whatever the Dungeon Master has access to, the players don't all need that. You know, it's just behind the scenes. It doesn't need to look all that nice. It's just a minutia. And I was trying to think about how I'm going to do it. And finally, I came up with this idea. Go back to the layout view. So I don't have to print stuff twice and things like that. I'm just adding an extra page for each page, which is the Dungeon Master's guide for that page. And there's only going to be 1 copy. So it's going to be easy to produce because I can print everything, but just leave out those pages for most people and just have these pages for me because I'm just running out of time. This is the most efficient way to go about this. So this here is the Dungeon Master's guide, where it's like baby in the basket. Host notes is what GPT and I ended up landing on, and we went back and forth. Anyway, I'm not going to show you the back and forth, but this is how we decided to do it. So the theme and the anchor, it's good to know, and I wanted to keep this as short and possible as these bullet points could be because, again, I will be conducting a ceremony here, so like I can't be reading off a thing. I just need to be glancing. So the beginnings of our story as a people, birth. All right. The questions to ask, and that's questions to ask people around the table to engage. Who remembers the story at first? Try to get them to tell the story. Let's try to bring out some other characters. Who was the mom? Who was his siblings? You know, Aaron, Miriam, all that. Why do you think this is where a story starts? So engage with the narrative. And then the story beats themselves. If I need to retell the story just quickly, the decree to kill the boys, the baby floated in the basket, Miriam watching from the shore, Pharaoh's daughter finds and rescues him, Moses grows up in the palace. And then the connection to the parallels, which can be, might or might not be used, but it's really good to have. The water will return later. I think the theme of water, Nile, Red Sea, and Mikveh. The parallel of the 10 plagues, so the children, kind of the eye for an eye aspect of that. The first act of civil disobedience conducted by women, right? This is actually the beginning of the resistance by Moses' mom. And the future is protected before it knows itself. This one I don't actually quite understand. I'm going to delete this. All right, so this is kind of the format, and moving along, this is how I did things. So next was the 4 questions. This was a very hard page to lay out because I have um, the title, Chinese explanations, and then Hebrew transliteration. English transliteration, English meaning, and I wanted like illustrations that can be colored in. Now, these are rather small, but I was looking at other Haggadahs and I saw that sometimes they do that in 2 pages, but it's just so many pages already. I think this is fine. The kids are going to be engaged enough in this section anyway because they're going to be singing it. In terms of my notes, the theme and the actor is this night is different from the rest of us. And the question to ask is, what is different for you tonight? And actually, I like this one. I mean, if I ever go back, this is probably enough, but we'll see. So I want, um, however many people I can get to tell them what feels different about that night, because this is the theme of this part of the Haggadah. Now, it took me a while to get to that illustration. Actually, I got to show you that because this is really funny. I wanted an illustration of the myth of baby Moses touching the coal, and I got all my illustrations from ChatGPT this time around. But let me go down to that part here. This is those illustrations, which I just cropped out. Okay, that's for an illustration. At first, it gave me this. It just shows you how silly I can be sometimes. I mean, it's fun. It kind of looks like a Simpsons things, but all right, he's a grown up. I don't know what he's like, Homer Simpson munching on a donut. I'm like, no, it was a toddler. I told him, like, look, this is a toddler. Like, what are you doing? He did this. I just love this. I don't know what the guy's thinking, but it's a toddler with a beard. It's very funny. And then I was able to guide it to give me that final one with the guiding hand. I didn't want it to show an angel, but I also wanted to show that Moses on his own accord would have gone for the gems. So this is very similar layout to the baby in the basket beat. But here, because I'm not as familiar with the myth, the story beats were very important because I'm going to ask people about the story, but I'm fairly sure that people won't know it as well. So the toddler Moses reaches for Pharaoh's crown. I forgot that was the inciting incident, which is why Pharaoh was really, that's great foreshadowing if you talk about storytelling, right? I'm actually going to put foreshadow. He's going to be a king. He's going to lead. He's going to bring his people to their own kingdom. Pharaoh wants to kill him. An advisor tells him about the test to show that he's smart, if he's smart or stupid, if he can tell the difference between jewels and coal. He's going to go for the jewels, but a divine intervention makes him go for the coal, burning his hands, putting it in his mouth, and developing that speech impediment, starting with a hindrance that he's going to have to overcome later. The questions that I came up with here is, what kind of leader would you expect for this story? Because in media narratives, you often just see such a strong leader without doubts and things like that. Like I said before, Rambo, this is a stuttering underdog. Why might it matter that Moses couldn't speak? I ended up with this. It took me a while to come up with this heading, which I enjoyed: a voiceless leader for voiceless people. Manhig bli kol le'am bli kol. So that's a connection that I made, and I enjoyed it. This is a good place to talk about the brotherly dependence of Aaron, people without a voice led by someone voiceless as well. Okay, next up we have Avadim Ainu. This is probably my best layout so far. And it took me a while to get to it. I mean, the text is pretty simple, but this is actually a combination of two images. The whip, like AI couldn't get the whip right, so I ended up getting the whip from somewhere else, and I had to divide this illustration. I'll show you the Vadimainu. Like I got these at first look also. The slaves are smiling. Like everything else is fine because I like that they're modern haircuts and stuff like that. Like this is fine for children. Why are they smiling as they're being whipped? And I'm like, come on, why are they smiling? And then it gave me this weirdness, this baby here with, I don't know what, the wig falling out. So this illustration was workable. I could have just cropped the bottom here and used it, but then I started to lay out the different elements on the page. And this is what I came up with. Again, it's very difficult to lay out these three elements, the Chinese, the English, make it meaningful. So I like this little innovation where the top is Avadim Ainu, Ata B'nei Chorin, right? We were slaves, now we are free in the top and bottom. And it kind of creates almost like a column, a Roman column. So I showed that to GPT, and I was surprised that it understood what I'm going for. It also gave me a compliment, which I liked. Here, I totally see what you're going for, and it's a strong visual idea. And then I said, hey, we have to split the illustration. It created these two illustrations for me. It's like, okay, they're good, they're fine. I tried to tweak them a little bit, but you see, I couldn't get the whip right, so I had to actually get the whip out of Adobe Express Elements somewhere and attach it. And it still felt a little bit empty, so I added these parallel pyramids to each other. So I'm happy with this layout. I like it. And then in terms of my Dungeon Master notes, we were slaves. So remember what it means not to be free, basically. That is the theme. And the question is, what's the worst thing you can imagine happening to you? Because such an abstraction to think about slavery like back then. So just try to imagine or something really bad had happened to you. And then what makes you cherish your freedom, and in what ways do you feel you're still not free? It's a discussion about freedom. And then basically, this is the last page I got to, which was the burning bush. Who knows the story? I got to this illustration pretty quickly. I like it. It's good. And then that's the refusal of the call, basically. That is the theme over here. That was the last page I got to. Oh, this is just a duplicate because I always start working from the previous layout that I have when I start a new page. So it looks like a lot of progress, but if we look at the Magids, I'm just here. See, I'm only a third of the way through the Magid alone. Not to talk about the entire Haggadah. We go back to the entire Haggadah. We're only here. So I got my work really cut out for me. And the layouts are not finalized yet. And this Dungeon Master idea I think is great, but I have to go back and do all of this. And I have a job. This is not what I'm doing day in, day out. So it's going to be a challenge. I want to finish this in the next 3 days, maybe, so I can print everything and proof it. I already ordered some crayons on Amazon, so I can give some crayons to everyone around the table. Here we go. Thanks for joining me if you have. Until next time.